Yep, we are now live. Welcome to our weekly Poodr Club. Let's start with the material. We're on chapter 2. Who wants to open up? Anybody?
It's not as much fun when you're the host.
It's not as much fun. Well, I had the slide.
We'll start with a slide. Let's take a look at it.
Oh, no, all I had was the Poodr slide.
Oh.
It's a good place to start, though.
Let me see. Who wants to open up? Let me see if I can share this. Anybody?
It's not as much fun when you're the host. I finally...
playing it on the other screen. I had this. Wow, that was crazy. You guys still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
I had it running in the background, so I was hearing the delay. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Open up chat. And so this is what I was doing. And then I got busy. First we started with our opening picture. And then we were talking about, basically the book starts by talking about designing classes with a single responsibility. Your goal is to design your application to do what it is supposed to do right now, but it is easy to change later. And then, like I said, I got busy, haven't done the other slides, but I've read the chapter twice. So why don't I go ahead and get into the book so we can talk a little bit about this. And let me stop sharing this. So in the beginning, we just talked about deciding what belongs in a class. And I guess part of this idea of belonging to a class, decide what belongs to class, is to make sure, hey, you keep everything kind of concise. And as she goes into it, she kind of jumps into grouping methods in classes, which is typical of making a class anyways. You design the methods for the class, but where she started getting meaty into the subject was this true concept, which was to make all code transparent, reasonable, usable, and exemplary. And then we start going into creating classes that have a single responsibility. And she starts talking about bicycles and gears. And how, let me get to this part, how basically there was a flaw in her methodology, because when you have the wheel size in there, if you change it from millimeters, or was it centimeters to inches, it breaks the whole system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does talk about that, doesn't she? Briefly?
She does.
Yeah.
She creates in order to make single responsibility, she makes a separate wheel class.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes into why or when to make these kind of decisions, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future and what might cause you to make a change. So how do you build the app to be prepared for changes? So I got the impression that what this basically says in a lot of ways is that if you do make changes, be prepared to make another class. That's what I feel, in a way.
Well, I think it's just always be looking for opportunities to create a new class from what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever you're adding new stuff to a class, be looking for opportunities to break it out and do a new one. And she gives she walks through in what sense does having chain inches make sense in this, or gear inches versus chain inches versus what was it, gear inches versus chain inches? Anyway, she had one that she's like, this clearly she's like, this particular attribute clearly belongs in a gear class. This one is arguable, and this one clearly does not. And then she gives reasons for why. And so it's not like some of them are borderline, but you should always be looking for opportunities to break it out into a new class, so that so you keep your classes small and only doing the one thing.
Well, also part of that, I get the impression, is that by only doing the one thing, if you have a change, it will only affect that specific class and not the whole program.
Right.
And I think that was part of the whole idea of the wheel, because what she does is she calls the wheel diameter into the gear inches class method, and that way, if something changes with the wheel class, as long as it still gives a diameter, it's not going to break her program.
Yeah, it's like the public method is a promise that you're making to the rest of the code, that public method is going to be doing something, even if you change what that method does inside of the object. The rest of your classes are going to be able to expect it to function usefully still.
Now,
go ahead.
Go on, Clayton. I'm going to go into my thing afterwards.
Well, I was just saying that, so like anytime you have a public method in one of your classes, that is that needs to, unless you're going to go in and mainly change every use of that method in your code somewhere, which is the thing we're trying to avoid. You want to have as few public methods as possible, and then when you do have them, you want them to function. You want them to function in a way that's expected, and when you have to make changes to them, those changes will automatically make sense in the rest of your code. And so that's one of the reasons for keeping classes trimmed down, so that when you do make changes to them, it doesn't spread. So one change in one method doesn't change all the other methods that are used in that class in other parts of your code. And so you don't want to change something to your chain ring attribute and have it break way off somewhere else in your code. And by keeping your classes small and concise and only doing one thing, and having your interactions between your methods being, you're not having a whole bunch of methods that are highly dependent on one another, you can limit the potential of that happening.
Right. Now, here's one of the issues I've always had, and maybe this can lead to an answer. I've done some Rails apps and some Ruby apps, and I don't always know, because she mentions to always use the attribute reader or access.
I do.
And I don't use it that much.
I don't use accessors. I only use readers.
You only use readers. Now, is it?
Yeah.
Well, why would you only use a reader? And I'm asking this. I know why you would, but I wanna reach a kind of conclusion about this.
Well, it creates an inherent form of encapsulation where you can't accidentally put like gear.cog equals 3 by accident somewhere in your code, or by whatever somewhere in your code, and screw up that instance of that class. To actually change it, you have to have a method that is, this is the method that changes that attribute. I'm going to pass in the data. It's going to make the changes inside of it. And it has to all be explicitly defined by a method that I write that is just for changing that attribute. And that creates a layer of encapsulation and a layer of explicitness that makes it safer than just willy-nilly being able to say object dot method equals whatever.
Which is what I usually do, which is why I ask. So the main reason to use the reader, especially I guess coming with the wheel coming over, is the main reason to use it is to make sure that you don't make any accidental changes in your instance variable.
Or even if they're not accidental, but hard to track down where the change is being made.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So like even if you are intentionally making the change, you're not going to be able always to keep all of those changes in your head. So you want to be able to easily track down where changes are being made. So if you have readers only, and then if you have a method that does make changes, that method is explicitly the method that makes the change to this attribute. It's a lot easier to track down that than it is just something dot something equals something.
So how come this is going how we did last time when we talked about Ruby Monday project? How come we didn't do it in there? Was it not needed?
Well, so Rails doesn't default that way, is my understanding. So, like a lot of times, I think a lot of Rails models and stuff explicitly have accessors, and I think it's just because of the way Rails is.
Okay, so you're saying in Rails it's not really necessary?
Well, I mean, I don't know enough about Rails to be able to say real well. Like, I'm just now starting to learn Rails. But I know when I'm just doing a Ruby app, whenever I'm defining a class, if at all possible, I just define readers, and a lot of times I'll even make as many of my readers as possible private, so that like they can't even be accessed outside of the class unless I need them to be.
Okay, so I'm going to use a key word here, and that's why I asked this question. By using the reader through this method, are we making it immutable?
You're making it you're not making it immutable because there's still ways to change it. Ruby has ways to change reader attributes.
Okay.
But you have to explicitly do it with like a send call or, yeah, Jesus just said, you could do it with a send call.
Send call, because these are symbols, and that's what I want to add into this. And the idea of using symbols over strings is that you create a mutable object.
Right.
And I'm just kind of throwing that in here so we can understand this better. And I don't know if you saw, if it was you who posted this, there was a interview questions list article somebody had posted, and one of the first things it talked about and discussed was what's the difference between symbols and strings and why you should know this. Mm-hmm. And it talked about the idea of immutability. And that's why I'm bringing this up, because it kind of mixes all with this concept over here. Okay, let's see. So we're kind of, this chapter, the first 2 or 3 chapters from my past experience, there's actually, if you look at Ruby Newbies, there's, I think, 4 or 5 videos where I've discussed this the first few chapters before. It's kind of short. So how do you want to proceed now with this? Do you want to look for code to start transforming?
I mean, I guess we can. Yeah, that seems like a cool idea.
Because I figured maybe if we have a project, or right now as a reference, Ruby Monday like we did last time.
I think it'd be even easier to, as far as this part of it, where she's talking about attribute readers and encapsulation and things like that. If we could find somebody that had a Ruby app and not a Rails app, I think it would be even easier to find instances of it, because it's going to be
pull up IRB and then screen share like this. Let's see.
Yeah.
And then, so like, for example, yeah, what were some of the things you guys wanted to check out? That's kind of slow. Isn't there like an ID or something like that method with Ruby where you could see the object ID and like attributes about it?
I believe it's actually
Yeah.
not, but it's object ID, which you said it was. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Is it like that? Well, let's try it. Oh, hey, cool.
We're
And
only
there's-
seeing your def gear inches ratio thing. We're not seeing your other.
Oh, see, that's good to know. Let me see.
We're not seeing your IRB session.
When you
Yeah.
hit screen share, it might show you 30 windows. That's what happens with me.
Is that working?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, now you got the object ID.
Oops. So let me clear this. String object ID.
Now you can ask if it's an object if you do a question mark.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost always going to say yes. So yeah, and those are two different. So if you do object ID again.
This one's 940 at the end.
Number. Yeah.
And then this one's exactly the same. 157128.
Right. Because
So-
it's not an instance. I don't think it's string object ID or the symbol string is Paces is screwing with it. Yeah, try that and see what it does. Now then do a.object ID.
Oops. Same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa. Oh, wait.
String.object ID.
Object ID. There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then B equals string. B equals string dot op. It's basically what we just did, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's going to break because you didn't put b.object ID.
Yeah. This the second one. I think I did. Yeah. I don't know if you could see it. Try to make this bigger. Grow.
Oh, no. You can see it good.
Okay. But yeah, I was kind of interested in how she kind of smashed things down. Maybe we could talk about that. Like, just from her snippet from her thing, she takes this and says, "This is really just diameter." Can you guys see my screen? Or see? Yeah. She said something like,
right now.
okay, let me change the screen. The future, a little confusing for me here.
It just takes practice. It took me I had to figure out how to start this shared live hangout too.
Bada
If
boom.
you do entire screen on your screen share,
Then you can see the whole.
it'll follow wherever you're at.
I have secrets though. I don't want you to see things. No, just kidding.
Fair
No,
enough.
but so yeah, I kind of like how because I'm the type of person who just makes like even like at the method level, she's like, well, like to me, I'd be like one line, great, I'm happy. She smashes it even more and like takes this section and says, hey, this is just basically diameter. Why don't we make another method call to diameter to make our code more readable?
Right. And part of this is also following the dry concept, because now if you want to call diameter on 5 different methods, you can.
Right.
Without having to retype that same code.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have a question about that real quick. So, if you wanted to call diameter on multiple classes, so like if you have a wheel class and a gear class, but diameter can apply to both of those technically.
You could have one inherit from the other, or you could create a is it a module I'm forgetting the term, where you just tell it like not inherit but like include. A mix-in. You create a mix-in and then include.
Well, the other thing, maybe this might be easier to think of. Let's say, you know how we see that gear inches? Let's say you're in America because we don't use, I don't know if this is the case with bicycles. We use inches on everything. And you want to make another method called gear centimeters. And you wanted to do the ratio times diameter, or, oh, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. And what you want to do now, this is perfect for using the code, this is even better. You can call gear inches, actually, and then multiply it by the conversion, right?
Right, exactly.
Times,
like whatever conversion, yeah.
whatever it is.
Right. And now, the only thing we're missing is the argument to pass. Correct?
Right.
Argument to pass. Is that self or what?
No, because I mean those are just like gears. I don't think there's an argument to pass.
Examples. They don't have any arguments to pass. How else are you going to know the inches unless you put them in? You know what I mean?
Oh, you would just pass in the rim and the tire, and it'll figure like you would just pass in the rim and the tire, and it would do everything else, or the ratio, and you'd have to define the ratio.
This is part of the object, so it's
you know what? I'm so lasered in on gear. I'm not even looking below. That's my fault. Sorry.
That's right. So this is the getter method here.
Yeah.
Right.
Entire.
So now, if you go and set the rim and tire, it should convert everything over.
Well, and you have to have ratio too, but yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to define your ratio somewhere. But so yeah, no, that was a really cool thing, the diameter. And you're right about the gear centimeters. That's a cool idea too, because by doing that, you actually, it makes it much more
dry,
safe. The only problem with, I guess, well, a dependency of gear centimeters on gear inches. That might not be kosher by her standards. I don't know.
And then you're calling here. Yeah.
Well, here's where it would break.
Like the less.
What if you got a gear that was only in centimeters? You know, that's where it might break.
Well, then you would actually change is. I mean, that's kind of what she's talking about. Is you'd actually change rim. So maybe define rim to equal. So maybe you'd have rim centimeters.
Right.
Centimeters. And so.
Right.
And
then you would do the conversion on. Yeah, you would do the conversion on rim and tire or whatever, and then that would, because by creating that dependency of gear centimeters on gear inches, always doing what you expect it to do, that creates an extra layer of you've got methods that are depending on, I mean, you're going to have methods that depend on other methods, but the more of it you have, the more entanglement you have, the more dangerous it all becomes.
Well, see, when you add too many methods, that's when you have to decide, is it time for another class? That's part of the point she gets across to you. Isn't one of her rules no more than 5 methods per class or something like that? I don't remember, and I have them somewhere.
That was kind of interesting. Like, she kind of gradually breaks into from like she goes from like gear, then she has like this gear plus wheel thing, which is a struct, which I don't quite understand. And then she goes from that to.
That was the first time I'd seen anyone use a struct that made sense to me. Because, so, the whole point of the struct is you take some data structure and you make it make sense. Like you give it useful naming and things like that. And that's what she did on page, I guess it would be page 28 if you're in the paperback version, where she talks about, like, she has the class revealing reference, and she had the one before that was the class obscuring reference, where it was diameters relied on calls to indexes, and it was kind of obscuring on what those calls to indexes were talking about. And by using a struct, she actually makes those calls to indexes. She gives them a useful information, makes them make sense by assigning attributes to them. The only thing I wanted to talk about that is, so I've actually avoided using structs in the past because structs have built-in attribute accessors. So, like, one of the things she talks about is using readers, not accessors, in the section before. She talks about hide instance variables. You hide them behind readers, and then in the very next section where she's hiding data structures, to hide them, she's using something that uses accessors. And I was wondering, I mean, I would think she did it to save room in code examples, but I think in that sense I would use a class there and create a class object and call it instead of using a struct. But I may be wrong. Like, there may be a reason why she did it that way, and I just don't know.
I don't know much about structs. So you're saying they have
they're kind of like
automatic.
they're like classes without all of the methods that a class just naturally inherits. They have a smaller set of methods, but they can be used to organize data in a useful way to access it. But you can create a data object the same way instead of using a struct. And I don't know why you would pick one over the other.
Let's look at the Rails something online. Let's see. This one. Can you guys see that? So
yeah,
it says.
Is that in Rails or Ruby you're looking at there?
Ruby.
Ruby. Okay.
Ruby docs.
Yeah. Right.
This is 2.2.
So they have new, just like a class object, and they take a block, but they don't have. So if you look at their public instance methods, they don't have nearly as many methods as a class object does.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's see. Struct versus class Ruby. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it's very dynamic. I guess there's like gradations. You could just say two classes, or you could like do a class and a struct, or you can do one class. It's kind of hard trying to figure out when to.
So, this conversation came up in the I want to say it was the Ruby chat earlier, and somebody had posted a link. I'm going to share the link to a blog post about how struct is overused. And there's a good discussion in there about the strengths and weaknesses of struct.
Mm-hmm. Did you get any main points from the talk, or
from the blog post?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the big thing that I got out of it is that it automatically creates public accessor methods. Okay. So it's like anything that you pass into a struct. So like in her example on page 28, she passes in rim and tire. So anything you pass into rim and tire, or when you pass in rim and tire like that, it's automatically going to build accessor methods for that. So it'll build getters and setters. And so that is one less layer of encapsulation you would have if you would create some kind of data object that didn't have those.
You know, even though it comes with automatic getters, can you override it with your own declaration?
Um,
Should we try it?
I don't know.
I wish I could copy paste this. It's not... You want to try it? Let's.
Yeah, give it a shot.
God, I'm lazy. I don't want to type this whole thing. View code image. Well, you guys start talking about something else. I'll see if I can hammer this out, and then.
So it gives some code examples on the blog. Let's see. Jesus says structs have other problems too, but I think they have a place. I think you should be able to overwrite the accessor.
To me, it almost seems like it goes against what she's talking about to use that.
Exactly. That was what I was saying. Is like she has the section before she had like use readers, don't use accessors when you can, and then she uses structs in her example, and structs do the very thing that she was warning against.
Right, and they also it kind of goes against just like enforcing single responsibility because it just like tacks it on to the end as opposed to just making it a new thing.
Right, right. Which I would think, because she talks about making will its own object at some point, and I would think that your go-to should always be making will its own object, which she does on the last section where she says finally the real will.
Mm-hmm.
What's the advantage then? Using a struct? Yeah.
I mean, you don't have another object. You don't have to write out a whole new object.
Yeah, I think for this it's just like a cognitive way to organize it and see if it does need its own class or if you can incorporate it into the one you already have. Because that's kind of the motions that she goes through is like, well, we can do this kind of shortcut thing and then figure out, does it work in its own class? And it does end up working, but kind of like this works right now, but we don't know yet what we will need in the future. So let's just leave it like this until we can figure out, until it like demands something else, and then we can put it in its own class. And then she does.
And this is just a guess too, but it may be an optimization thing. It may be that creating all of these classes, these object instances, uses up more time than creating these structs that have less methods and things on them, but that's just a guess. I don't know if that's true or not. So I'm sure if you get deep into Ruby optimization, that's something they talk about.
Cool.
She does talk about refactoring a lot, so I think it was never intended to be permanent.
Right. It was the first time I'd ever seen a struct that, oh, that's why it's called a struct. That makes sense now.
Well, she had the struct before she separated the wheel class, correct?
Right. She made it into its own class later.
And then you didn't need the object anymore.
But I found, so she does say, she says, before she puts wheel into its own class, she's talking about how she shows the thing to her cyclist friend, and her friend is like, oh, well, I need a computer that calculates the circumference. And she's like, oh, well, now wheel needs its own class because now it does something else outside of being related to the gear.
Right, and I would have done that right off the bat and gone straight to class.
So yeah, I'm wondering why. I guess just because those two were so intimately connected, like there was no use for either of them without the other one. But with the more information, you're like, okay, this needs to be its own class. But yeah, it seems like I would have just done that straight off the bat because to me it makes sense to have something as clear cut as a wheel and a gear into its own class because they're discrete objects. But maybe that's not the right way to think about code. But that's the way that when I was reading it, it made sense to me. So I was really thrown off by the struct class because she even talks about how it makes sense because they're nouns, and when you're writing a program like this, you think about it in terms of like nouns and verbs, and what do they do, what messages they send, what are the
I thought that was a
objects.
really useful heuristic.
Which blog post did you link? I didn't see. Oh, that one? Okay, this one's another good blog post about struct.
I have one post about the struct.
We should look at those.
I'm reading the code newbie one right now. When should you use a struct?
Oh, is there a code newbie one?
That link, or maybe it's not. Maybe it wasn't the code newbie. I'm sorry. I thought that you had linked to a code newbie one, but that's not. Whenever, yeah, it was just the URL was. Yeah, it wasn't code newbie after all. It just said code newbie in your. It's got you listed as code newbie right now. So when I clicked on it, I thought I was going to a code newbie link. I bet if we had Sandy in here right now, she would tell you that, like, classes are probably the way to go most of the time there anyway. But I don't know. I know I asked James about it Wednesday, and he was like, oh yeah, I don't use structs. Because I asked him, I said, do you use structs a lot? And he says, oh, I try to avoid using them because they have accessors. So, and he's like, I can't, there's very rarely an instance where they're obviously superior to using a class.
I think it's just it's a stepping stone. Like, it was very much temporary and was always going to be temporary.
Right.
And that seems to me like the only place that you would use it is just kind of collecting your thoughts into code, and then, yeah, if you're just testing something, it's fine.
It was useful for making the methods more transparent. Because, like, by turning the because I mean that was the explicit example she used was turning the indexing into explicit methods. So that was useful, but you could do the same thing with class.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. You can't access if it's a struct. You can't. I don't think I could access it from outside. There's no I don't know if it's a public method.
What are you trying to do?
So we'll go back to your console IRP so you can see that.
So I loaded her code, Sandy Metz's code, and I created a gear object. I just put ones. And so I had gear inches and gear ratio. And when I try to do a wheel instance, make a wheel object, it said...
Yeah, I think it's just because the struct only exists inside of that. It doesn't actually exist as its own object outside of the context of the gear object.
Okay.
But I bet if you do gear dot rim, maybe?
Not rim.
No, didn't do it.
See, there should be a reader, right? Let's see. How to reader? Oh, there's chainring and cog. So cog.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it doesn't have. You could do. Yeah. Okay.
Wheel doesn't. Oh, wheel has a getter. G.wheel. Oh, and then we can get access. We could access it from there. There's rim. G.wheel.rim.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then if you go g.wheel.rim equals 0.
See if we can do an accessor.
Yeah, and now go g.wheel.rim, and it'll be 0.
And that's what. Can you guys see that? It's on the bottom though.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, then that way there's that
that's
automatic. So the struct does the automatic accessor reader rim, because we didn't define it at all. You think we can define a new? We should define rim to a string or something. You want to try that?
Yeah.
Hello.
You could do, or you could just do @rim inside of there, and that would make it into a reader.
Okay.
And see if that gets rid of the accessor.
Okay.
You'd have to do it inside of the struct.
So you want it inside the struct or outside the struct?
I'm not sure.
I was just seeing if I could change the struct. That's all. The reader.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's do that.
It's going to probably throw an error because it's going to be a string added to a number.
Yeah, I wouldn't even. Well, then we know it works.
Right.
Let's do. You have to load, right? Load.
Yeah.
Yes. There it is. Oh, yep. There. Warning: already initialized gear wheel. Previous definition wheel is true.
So you have to. It's because you'd have to restart your session.
Okay. Load. Temp. Sorry, I have to speak out loud. I hope it's not faster. All right. I don't think we'd even be able to do this. G equals gear, because like you said, because it made it. Whoa, gear.
So now it's starting to do things we didn't expect.
Wheel.rim. There it is. Hello world.
Now see if you can set it equal to something. If you could set it equal to 1.
Should let him.
Oh, see, yeah, that's dangerous.
But then when I read it again, it's still going to be hello world.
Yeah. But now try like gear dot, like what uses rim?
G dot ratio. Let's see. What uses rim? Diameter. Gear inches won't work. I think G dot gear inches.
Should blow up.
There.
Yep,
blew up. Split the string rim and equal rim are different methods. Yeah, so the accessor is equals. So this is the accessor, right. So that's why it's not affected. But the reader is still hello world.
Weird.
So, try G wheels. Let's see, G dot wheel. Wheels? Just try wheel. Oh, what?
Yeah. See, that's
why is it 1?
Yeah.
My mind is blown. Wheel rim.
That's.
That should be hello world.
Yeah.
That's so weird. I'm now confused even more.
You now have yourself a lightning talk at RubyConf this year.
Well, no, I guess so. I think some of the advantages I think she might be alluding to is that it is easier to just create the struct inside because it's just faster, maybe. Like you guys were saying, it's just out of convenience.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still kind of hard to figure out exactly what downsides are, and obviously the behavior is not as predictable. Just really weird. Oh, what if we made a rim method here? What should I put?
Well, it already has a reader there. Like, so when it does attribute reader, that is the same thing as defining rim.
Yeah, but the difference is this one's defined in the struct.
Oh, okay.
And this one would be defined in class, and so it's a matter of what happens.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
100. So IRB Load. Yeah, that's why I like short names. G equals gear. New 1, 1. Okay. So it defines wheel with rim equals to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we set it here. And then G dot, what was it? Gear inches? Gear inches. So that's still this one.
Right.
But there's G dot rim, which is this one.
Yeah.
And G dot wheel. So this is the reader, which should be the other one.
Right.
Okay. All right. That kind of is confusing. Is there anything else you guys want to try out?
No. I learned.
So let's try to refactor this to what she did then. So let's take this out, just to kind of go, finish with what the book says. Can you guys remember how she changes the code after this step?
Take the def rim out.
Def rim out, yep. Mm-hmm.
That's her original right there.
Yeah, and then does anybody want to talk out how to go from this step to the next?
I think she actually wrote a new class right there.
So
yeah, you would just after above wheel, yeah, right there. You would break that out into a new class instead of class being, yeah, it'd be class will, and then take the struct new alpha into that.
Class wheel.
And then you need an initialized method that would take that.
Yeah. And then
you would want readers for, go ahead and, do readers for rim and tire.
Tire. Rim equals. So she's setting it here, and and then at tire. Oops.
And then you create it right there.
So this is the second step.
Yeah. And then instead of it'd be no will dot new rim tire. That'll work.
So you think this will work?
Should.
All right, let's try it out. G equals.
I don't think it will work.
Okay.
What are we missing?
You have symbols in your arguments.
Oh yeah, he's right.
Mm-hmm. Is that it? All right, let's try it. Load. Yep, and G equals. Oops. G dot. So the gear inches. That was the same.
Yeah. Yep.
G dot ratio. Is there a wheel? How do we? So we can't do the.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Try gear dot will. Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna work.
Because will's defined.
Oops. Wheelie. Oh.
Yeah. See.
That's still
gives you
the same.
yeah. But if you try to assign rim, it's not going to let you.
Okay, let's try it. Gems out rim equals. Is this only a reader?
Yeah.
Undefined error rim.
Undefined method rim equals.
Whereas in the struct, that was a doable.
Right.
Cool, man. That's really illustrative.
Now let's play around with this a little bit. Can you go back into the class and change them to accessors?
Okay. So you want to change that to
Mhm.
accessors.
Okay.
Exit. Load.
There you go.
G.
Okay. Now let's assign the rim numbers after you do all this.
Okay. G dot.
Will.
ratio.
To G.will.
Okay, and then G dot wheels. Oops. G dot
Okay.
wheel dot rim.
Yeah. Now assign the number.
One. Yep.
Well,
Dude.
it was already, yeah.
Well, let's pick a different one.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry.
There we go.
No, let's try the
Yeah.
ratio again. So gear inches was supposed to be 3, right? Gear.
Mhm.
Now it's 12.
Yep.
12, yeah. So
Cool.
that's one less layer of encapsulation there.
So what does that mean? One less layer. Oh,
Well, yeah. By having the accessor, that's one less level of encapsulation that
okay.
that will
Yeah.
class has.
Because you could do more to it and stuff.
And that goes back to
You-
the earlier conversation about using a reader and when. So if you didn't want anybody to mess with the rim attribute, you've protected it by making a reader instead.
Right. Now, let's say that you run into some very special situation where you still need to be able to get in there and change rim. You could do that with just while still having a reader. Ruby has a way to do that.
Right.
So if you, okay, go ahead and restart this. Yeah, and I'll show you how.
Okay. Sam.
Let me
Oops. Oh, big G.
There we go. So, okay, if you type in g.will.rim, okay, now if you do,
Verify this doesn't work. 4. Okay. Now I want to be able to change it.
yeah, if you do g.will.rim.send and with an argument of some number, or no, that's not going to work. Jesus, write it out for me. What do I need here?
We just try different things.
Okay.
G.will, it'll be g.will, it'll with an argument of send.
Yes. G.will.send
Yeah, g.will.send rim.
Will.send
No, take
rim.
the
without the rim.
yeah, hang on. G.will.
Argument of rim. Like that. Something like that.
Right.
That'll be a, yeah.
Yes. And you need a symbol as an argument. Rim equals. You want to do the writer, no?
Yep.
So no comma and the number.
So 8. Right? Is that going to work?
You're missing a comma.
There's a comma
After the equals.
after the equals.
Yes.
Please work. Shoot.
Ooh. Hang on.
Define method rim equals.
Try it
Maybe
without
it's just
the
equals.
rim equals. Try it without the equals. Just try it with the g.will.rim. Yeah, try that.
Wrong number of arguments. One for.
Because you're calling the reader.
Yeah. Okay, I'm calling the reader. Okay. Now let's try this. Isn't equals itself an argument or a method?
Yes.
So wheel.rim equals maybe send. Well, I don't know. I guess this is
Oh, you know what? Let me see. Try this.
G.wheel.send.
I'm typing it in here.
Oh, okay. I was just reading the group chat. I think we tried this one, but
Try that. See what you get.
G.wheel.send.
No,
The reader.
number of arguments 1 for 0. I don't know. I know there's a way to do it.
When I'm looking it up, the send is put under a underscore. So it's like, no, other way, underscore in front. There's no dot, it looks like.
Like that?
Yeah, but maybe I'm misreading the documentation. Then go ahead and put the parentheses.
Rim? Symbol rim.
There you go.
You want
Well, see,
equals?
now this one shows a dot send. I'm gonna.
I mean, shoot, my computer's not going to break if I try it, so. But, I guess, coming back to it, though, the point is that they are different, and so this is us trying to make it the same. You have to go through all this trouble to try to get the same behavior.
Right. Well, I don't ever use send because it's dangerous to use. The whole point of send is to get around readers. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's doing it because it's nested inside of another object or.
I mean, it could be even Ruby 2.0, like, who knows, like, maybe they fixed
Try
it,
instance eval.
Instance, what? I think the problem is we have a rim equals. Is there another way? I have another down here somewhere.
Actually, try what I put.
That's H. Yeah.
Now you got me curious. I'm going to open up Pry here and try something.
That,
I think instance eval is the way to go.
see if I can copy this.
I just trade in IRB.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. And oh, that's P. What? G. G dot wheel. It's still one. G dot wheel dot.
Try g.wheel.instance eval.
G dot wheel dot. Eval. Do I do the same argument?
Yes.
Equals 3. Is that right?
Yes.
He's got
There you go.
G dot wheel. Yay! We did exactly what it did before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
basically,
I feel like
I called the Ruby rolls and made the work 5 times more.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of readers is to make it hard to screw with things inside of an object. So, yeah, it's a pain in the ass to do it.
but where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Right. Yeah, there's a way you can do it in Ruby without using accessors. But the whole point of readers is not to, the whole point of readers is to make it hard to do things like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't have, I guess, that much control over your application environment or anything, so you are protected in a certain way. Cool. Well, that was good. I feel like I learned a lot.
Me too.
Have you guys listened to or watched Citizen 4? I watched it a couple days ago. Kind of trippy. But yeah, I'm pretty sure like all this stuff, like this like instance eval stuff is kind of like hackery, and people use it to break into databases and stuff. I'm not sure exactly how, but this stuff's pretty interesting in that sense, you know.
Yeah.
You could just like go to your bank and be like account. And send.
Eval.
Checking. Equal 1 million. You know, something weird like that. I don't know.
Right.
You know what? There was a high school out here that a couple students had put key lockers on the teachers' computers, and then they were charging all these other students to change their grades because they got into the grading system.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know, where was the antivirus? Where was this?
I stole my teacher's password in school with a keylogger, but I didn't change anything.
Allegedly.
You just have a 4.0, that's all. You earned it. What's crazy is there's those people, I guess, back in the 80s, or you know, computers are still new. They broke into things because they know so much computers, but instead of going to jail, they actually got hired.
Well, I'll give you a great example. This was even before computers. There was a person who a big thing was hacking. It was called phreaking telephone systems. And there was a blind guy who could mimic. He's in jail. Mimic the tones of the phone, where he could have it automatically charge a collect call. This is a story I read, like 15 years ago. But he had if he heard the phone number you typed, he knew what the phone number was.
Wow.
He was that good. Let's see.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he has a nice Wikipedia page. His name was Matthew Wiegman.
Anything? It's like that?
Weiegman.
W-E-E. I see some prison pictures
Right
here.
there.
Well. Blind man, heightened hearing ability, receive telephone operators and fake various in-band phone signals. Wow, that's crazy.
But back then, people used to make millions and millions of dollars in collect calls. And they would find a way to get a free collect call and sell it to other people. Because remember, long distance was actually a big deal.
Well, especially in prison, I'm sure using the phone is a very essential.
Well, I mean, just in general, I don't know. Like now, I don't pay for long distance for all cell phones. But 15 years ago, if you made a phone call, local phone call, that was more than 12 miles from your home, you got charged a long distance charge.
Yeah.
Might have been pennies, but you still did it.
Yeah.
Phone phreaking was a cool thing back in the day.
Phone
I missed out on the. I wasn't old enough to really be around for the phone phreaking days, but it's cool.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for the session. I'm gonna bail, but thanks for going over that stuff. It was really helpful. I haven't really actually implemented it, but I think it'll get me closer after kind of seeing it work. You know.
Oh yeah.
If you're writing just Ruby classes and not Rails models and stuff, try just using readers and see how that gets you.
Okay.
And if you want, even the ones that you're not expecting to call outside of that class object, try making those private. See, because then you don't have to call that instance. You know, like okay, so one of the things, readers get used inside and outside of the class. So like for example, with the wheel one, where you're calling in the diameter rim plus tire times 2, rim is being called as a reader there because it doesn't have the @ symbol in front of it. Mm-hmm. If you changed your attribute reader, if you put a new line below that, below your attribute reader that said private, no, not in your gear, in your wheel.
Where? Line.
In your wheel class, go to your wheel class.
Got it. And
below your attribute reader, put private. And then rim and tire. Just like your reader.
Okay. The method rim and tire?
No. Put rim and tire just like on the line with your reader, where you have private.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. Make those private. And then they'll be able to call diameter, but they won't be able to call rim and tire in the gear.
Okay. You want to give it a shot?
Yeah, you can try it.
I don't know. I probably don't need to do all this, but I'll just exit anyway because this one used to.
And this creates a whole nother layer of encapsulation.
Are you aware that the term anger baby, that's an offensive term?
Yeah. And then
no, don't do the send. Just try. Oh, it broke, didn't it? Yeah. But
yeah.
Try calling gear inches on just G.
Gear dot inches.
Or no, gear inches. G dot gear inches.
Oh, okay. G dot gear inches. Yeah. So it's
because it can still use diameter because diameter is a public method, but it can't use rim and tire inside of diameter because those are private. They're only used inside of the class now.
Okay.
So it creates a whole nother layer of encapsulation. Basically, the reader still exists inside of the class, but it doesn't exist outside of the class.
Yeah. Cool.
And it's a really useful way to hide things from. If you don't want it to be known outside of the class, that's a great way to hide it.
I still don't know why
you
wouldn't want it, or I still don't know why you'd hide it. Like, what's the advantage of that? But
it's just another layer of encapsulation.
Uh-huh.
The less information your object gives away that you don't want it to, the better. You may have booleans that depend on something returning true or false, and if it can't return it, if you want it to blow up instead of returning that, then you can make it do that.
Okay. Cool.
And you can, do you know about private methods?
I know that you just put it above the method. And
if you just have a bare private, so like in this case, you had private, and then you assigned the 2 attributes that are private in the wheel class. But if you just have a bare private,
like this, right?
Just the word private without the things after it. Everything, all the methods defined below that are only accessible inside of the class. Those are not public methods. Those are private methods.
Yeah, so they can only be called within
wheel. So for example, now if you left that in there and then tried to run gear, it would blow up whenever you tried to do gear inches because or try g.gear inches and it should blow up. Yeah.
Diameter's not. Okay. Because it calls it
And
here.
when I'm refactoring, a lot of time when I'm refactoring, I'll move saying if I want to break if I want to make a public method smaller, I'll break sections of it out into private methods and then have it call those private methods. And that's a way to refactor and make your methods shorter and more easier to read without creating a whole bunch of new public methods.
Mm-hmm. That's what he kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so like let's say that we wanted diameter to be public, but rim and tire needed to be defined by some crazy long method. Instead of having to put all of that logic inside of diameter, we could have a private method for rim and a private method for tire. Actually, that wouldn't work in this case because we have readers for that. But let's say diameter relied on gear size and tacos, and gear size and tacos are both these crazy long bits of logic. We could define gear size and tacos inside of private methods and call them inside of the wheel class, but they wouldn't ever be accessible outside of the wheel class. No other class, no other object would ever even know they were there. They would just exist inside of diameter.
Yeah.
Or they would, or wherever else they got called inside of that class.
It tucks away all the extra stuff.
Yeah. So you want to make as few of your methods public as possible, and that's a good way to have more methods and more logic, but they're hidden behind methods that aren't public.
Okay. Cool. Well, see you guys. Sorry, guys, gotta go. But I'll see you guys next week, and looking forward to maybe even Monday. Hopefully, catch you guys then.
All right,
Yeah.
take it easy.
Thanks.
I'm sorry I talked so much tonight.
No, that's great. So, what else would you like to discuss? Anything? Anybody? Does I look like I just woke up? No. So shall we call it a night?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I'm going to put this in the book club channel. It's not really a book club. A few months ago, and maybe it was 8 months ago, just kind of like Code Wars, I had done some of Ruby Monk, and then after the end of each section, they had these challenges. And now I've gone back and done some of those challenges, but I don't know if there's people want to find out if there's interest in covering all Ruby Monk, because that's even though it doesn't go into details about what you need to do per se, just basics. Those challenges are pretty interesting and kind of remind me of Code Wars, but some of them not as on the same difficult scale, and some of them seem harder than Code Wars. By Alexandra.
Quick question: who wants to host next week?
I can most likely host next week. I don't know if does the connection seem better with me hosting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Seems a lot better.
I have a decent connection here, so if that makes a difference, then I'll just start doing that.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to make it next week.
Yeah, I'm not positive if I'm going to be able to make it either. We're day by day on this whole pregnancy thing at my house. So.
That's so exciting.
Worst case, if we have to, we can
Yeah,
we can skip a week. We'll figure it out. We'll talk about it in the Slack channel.
Yeah.
And we'll take it from there. What were you
I
gonna say?
actually, somebody had talked about doing, there's a Rails competition thing coming up?
The Rails Rumble, it's in 2 months. You know what? I'm going to stop broadcasting.
Right.
Turn that off, and we'll go
Okay.
details. And for everybody or anybody else viewing out there, thank you.